So in this video, what I'm going to do is sort of talk through the syllabus a little bit, so you get a better feel for some of the information, how it's going to play out. If you're already here, that means you've probably already gotten to my webpage. So what I would recommend you do is pause the video or stop and look at it new entirely. But get either a video or a hard copy of the the syllabus, so that you'll be able to kind of follow through a little bit with some of the things I'm talking about. I think most of it's pretty straightforward. You can read it pretty much on your own. I'm not going to read it to you, but I would recommend that you do. There are a few little notions that I want to make sure and emphasize, so there's no confusion, I hope, and that'll help to make this semester go better. I'm teaching two different courses, several different sections of the different courses, and one of them is trigonometry, and one of them is Calculus 1. The overwhelming majority of what I'm going to say here will apply to both courses, and so I'm not going to make a separate video for each. I'll just, where they are different, I'll make sure and emphasize the two, and then you can sort of listen to the one that applies to your particular class. So, if you have either the document open or even a hard copy in it, you can see the course. Again, the course is either Trigonometry or Calculus 1. One of the things, there's a Latin sentiment there at the top, and it's something I caught on to, probably several years ago by now. It's a Latin sentiment, and I think it applies pretty well to the start of any semester. In particular, those of you who are starting the calculus sequence. If you start in Calc 1, many of you have Calc 1, a lot of you have Calc 2, many of you will have Calc 3, some of you have differential equations, some of you have partial different, some of you may have 5 or 6 semesters of calculus in front of you. And if you're in the trigonometry, then you might have pre-calculus, and then the calculus sequence. You may have 5 or 6 or 7 semesters of mathematics in front of you, all of which is going to build on the work that we're going to do this semester. And so it's very important that you start well. The Latin phrase, finis origine pendet, roughly means the end depends upon the beginning. The end depends upon the beginning. And I think most of us, if we pause, one of the reasons this is this notion has hung around since time when people spoke a lot of Latin, is that there's some truth to it. I think most of us understand that if you start poorly, there's a pretty good chance things are going to end up poorly. If you want to have the better chance of finishing well, probably you need to start well. And particularly if you're looking down the calendar of several semesters of a math course in let's say the calculus sequence, if you start poorly in Calculus 1, it's going to be very challenging for Calculus 2 and 3 and differential equations. Trigonometry, it turns out, if you're in the trigonometry course, it really is important that you start well. If you ask almost any calculus instructor, Calc 1, sure, and especially Calc 2, if you ask any calculus instructor what they wish their students knew better coming into calculus, almost to a person they would say trigonometry. I wish students knew trigonometry better. I wish students knew trigonometry better. And so if you can start well with trigonometry, that really increases the chance that you will finish well. Anyway, there it is. And so Eggless, Eggless is pronounced egg as in chicken, and Lee, I guess, as in Lee. So Eggless. It's not Eagly or Eagly or something, Eggless. And so this is my little video. You're in my spare bedroom upstairs here. And I'm going to make the video lessons for all the sections of the course. And then it's really important that you will watch those, and that's how essentially the instruction is going to work. And a lot of the other details are in both the syllabus and in some of the other documents that are on the web page. In fact, that's the next piece. My email address is eggs@lonestar.edu. Most of you probably won't be using that. Most of you will be using the Yahoo email accounts that I have set up for each of the individual sections. Your class, as you read through those documents that are beneath in the web page, beneath the syllabus, if you read through those documents, you'll see I've set up for each individual class a specific yahoo.com email address. It makes it so much easier for me to keep things separate. There are lots of advantages that occur from this side of the screen rather than from your side of the screen, and that's why I'm doing it. It covers a lot of evil, a host of errors here, and so even though you can email me at the lonestar.edu address, is probably better in the long run, especially in this weird sort of online setting, for you to correspond with the yahoo.com address. Now, the big deal is my webpage. If you're here, you probably already found my webpage because that's how you click to get to this video. That's going to be absolutely indispensable. I will not work this semester using the school's D2L system. The only thing you will have done is you went there and it told you to go to my webpage, and after that you will not need to access, as far as I can tell, you will not need to access D2L at all for the rest of the semester. Everything is being done on my webpage. There are several reasons for that. Again, none of them are important from your side of the video screen, but that's the way it's going to work. So you need to be able to access that with a smartphone or with your computer. If you're at some computer other than one you ordinarily use for any reason, the simplest way to find my webpage is to go to Google and just Google the phrase my name, Daryl Eggless, my name, and the word blog. And I think it's the very first thing that comes up. It takes you to the math department page. You go down until you find my name. It says faculty webpage, boom, and there you are. And so and that's the page you'll want to bookmark or label so you can come back to it. And that's the one you want to be able to make sure and have access to. Any announcement made on the webpage, and there will be many, any announcement made on the webpage is I consider that equivalent as if we were in a face-to-face class and I made it face-to-face in the classroom. The textbooks, if you're in trigonometry, it's this textbook. It's Leal and Miller or Hornsby and a couple other people. So Leal et al. This is the 11th edition. And if you're in the calculus sequence or calculus class, this is, Larson Edwards. This is one of the major standard calculus texts that universities use. And it is the 11th edition. So it turns out both courses use the 11th edition. It's going to be important for you to have access to a text. I don't care if you have the hard copy, the actual physical textbook copy. I don't care if you have, it doesn't matter if you have that, or it doesn't matter if you have an electronic copy, but you need to have access to the text. If you do not have access to the text, there's a really good chance that the semester is not going to go the way you want. All the assignments are going to come from the text. You do not need any other computer access code, any computer homework system code. You don't need any of that. All you need is access to the text, either hard copy or electronic, but that's all you're going to need. All the assignments come from that text. The page numbers come from the 11th edition. The section numbers come from the 11th edition. Everything I'm doing comes from the 11th edition. Both the trigonometry and the calculus are in the 11th edition. And so if you, for whatever reason, I'm not your dad, I don't have any control over what you do and don't do that way. If you have, for whatever reason, a 10th edition or an 8th edition or whatever else you have, I cannot advocate that you do that. I advocate you get that textbook. Or electronic copy of it. If you have some other version, it is up to you to figure out what the actual page number is for you and what the actual section number. Page numbers might be different, sections might be different, the titles might be different, the individual problems might be different. That's up to you to sort out. But everything I do will be coming from those texts, the 11th edition. You do not need access to any computerized homework system of any kind. Everything will come from those two textbooks. Okay, I'm going to go down screen here a little bit. The grade scale. Everything in the course is going to come from exams. If I were king, we wouldn't be doing this. We wouldn't be doing this distant learning with video. We'd be in person. But that ship has sailed, and they didn't let me king. So anyway, but the way I'm doing the grades this semester is all scores come from the exams. That you won't be scored on homework. There might be a quiz here and there that might come up. When that happens, I'll let you know so you know it's coming at you. But essentially, everything, the plan now is to come from the exams. Both the trigonometry and the calculus, they're going to be 4 exams and a final. 4 exams and a final. The specific content is covered in your specific syllabus, so you can see what chapters are in what exams. All the exams are going to be worth 100 points. The final exam was worth 100 points, so that's 4 exams and a final. That's easy enough. That's 500 points. And when I assign grades, I do not use percent. I don't care what your percentage is. It doesn't matter. What matters to me is the number of points. And so, for example, you can see that in each of these scales, to get an A, you need 500 to 450 points, and then 449 to 400. That's B, and so on down the scale. So if your goal is to get an A, then your goal is to get 450 points. There's no rounding. There is no 89.89%. Oh, does that number get rounded? I don't use percentage. It doesn't matter to me. I don't care what the percentage is. It goes by points. Point is a point is a point is a point. And if your goal is to get an A, then your goal is to get 450 points. If you have 449 points, you don't yet have 450 points. I do not know all the mathematics in the world. I'm the first person to admit I don't know all the math in the world, but I can do less than. And I know 449 is less than 450. If your goal is to get a B, then your goal is to get 400 points. If you have 339 points, that is not yet 400. In December, when the grade sheets roll around, if you have 449 points, and if this is the grade scale we're using, if this is 449 points, then you do not have claim on an A. You don't have claim on an A until you get 450 points. A point is a point is a point. You should have gotten one more multiple choice question way back in October, and you wouldn't have had to worry about it. So you need to draw the line somewhere, and that's where I'm drawing the line. So that's all pretty straightforward. The exams, you can read through what the exam types will be like. And the final exam, when you get the exams, you need to make sure and hang on to those so that you can have something to study for the final. My final exam, what I will do is I will merge all the previous exams together into one great big document, and I'll throw stuff around and rearrange it, and I'll change cosine to a sine, I'll change a minus to a plus, but they're essentially the same problems. So my final exam tends to be sort of like a greatest hits album. I'll go through the previous album releases and do a studio remix or something, and then I'll have the exams. A couple things to make sure and make note of here. A couple items. Oh, I went too far there. All right. Methods you can use. You are only permitted to use methods discussed in instruction, either on the video or when we do our Zoom time. We're going to have some Zoom meetings where we'll talk. But you are only permitted to use methods that are used in the class. I don't know all the math in the world, but I've been doing this for a few years. This is not my first rodeo. And if you are using a technique that is beyond or outside what we've discussed, you do not have claim to credit. You forfeit your claim to credit if you use any method, any technique other than what we discuss in class. Sometimes there are more advanced techniques that do the work we do, and I am not using those more advanced techniques for a specific reason that you guys might not know about yet. And so the only techniques you're allowed to use are the techniques that are used in the class instruction, either whether it's in the video or whether it's in a Zoom meeting. Let's see, neatness counts. If I cannot read your work, I'm not going to grade it. If you don't know if your work is neat enough, a good rule of thumb, if you're not sure if it's quite neat enough, it probably isn't. Make it neater. All right? Notation matters. It says here, notation in a mathematics class is analogous to grammar in a composition class, or spelling in a composition class. If you turn in a paper in a composition class and you have incorrect grammar or incorrect spelling, you should expect some sort of a deduction in your grade. Well, that's what's going to happen here. If you use incorrect notation, you should expect a deduction. That's the language of mathematics. It's the communication of mathematics. It is not correct, and it applies to anything that's getting graded there. Deadlines matter. There are going to be deadlines. We'll talk about those later on. They'll become clear as the semester goes on. If the deadline, and when I say deadline, there's going to be a minute. There's going to be a minute by which you need to have some work finished. If the minute is 9:45 a.m., and your work is submitted 9:46 a.m., number one, I'll know it because the computer, you're going to submit it via computer, and the computer will put a timestamp on it. If the required time is 9:45 a.m. and you submit it at 9:46 a.m., you should expect a deduction. And it does not matter what the reason is. If your technology fails, that doesn't matter. If you didn't quite finish, if you didn't start in time, if it doesn't matter. If there's a timestamp, and if it's late from that timestamp, you should expect a deduction. Directions matter. If you don't follow directions, if you do not follow directions, you forfeit your claim to any credit. If you do not follow directions. And then you are responsible at all times to make sure you've kept up with all those pieces. You need to be aware that if you have never taken an online course before, more of the burden falls to you. In a face-to-face course, when we're meeting, I can pick up and cover some of the slack on some things, but when it's online, much more of the burden falls to you. Time management, among other things. You're going to need to bring some game. You need to bring devotion. You need to bring discipline. You need to start well. You need to not fall behind. If you fall behind, you will not survive the avalanche. So make sure you keep up with your work. I reserve the right to have any quizzes at any time for any number of points. You can read through all this. If I do, then the grade scale will get adjusted, and I will let you know what the adjustment is. All right? Now, there's this little segment, and I don't want to spend too much time with this, but you should read through this very carefully. Your grade is based absolutely and entirely upon the number of points you earn on exams, and if there are any, on the quizzes. Your personal situation will not serve as a substitute for points earned. It doesn't matter what your personal situation is. In fact, what I did here is I removed anything that could identify the individual person. And I copied these word for word. So if there's bad grammar, it's because I copied it. I just copied and pasted. The only thing I took out was things that could identify the person. Each one of these is an email that I received. Each one of these, I received this email after final grades were posted. If you have a question about your grade and you think you're not doing as well as you ought, the time to ask is not after final grades. The time to ask is before the exams are given. So here we go. Just a couple of these. This actually was from a person. It is not as simple as me retaking this class. I am in high school. I took the name out. And my continued enrollment in dual credit program, some of you this applies, does not allow for me to get a D in any class. I have been able to complete so many hours so far. I am well on my way to obtaining my AS degree by the time I graduate from high school. While I know this is not your problem, they got that part right. While I know this is not your problem, I am asking for some considerations. 0 points. That got 0 points. Let's see, what else we have here. I am on the border. I'll skip one over. I am on the border between A and B. I got very good grades on the previous exams. The only thing I missed was one quiz. I am transferring to somewhere, and if I get a B, everything in my life will be destroyed. I will have to go back to my home country, and there is no chance for me to study because of my immigration status. That is my situation. It depends on just 2 or 3 points, said the person who did not take one of the quizzes. It depends on just 2 or 3 points. Please, please, if you can, help me reach my goal and continue my education. That person received 0 points. I had a person, I didn't put this. This was one of my colleagues. They had a person email them after the summer session was over. And that person, as the semester was going on, this person evidently emailed my colleague and said this person has contracted COVID and was unable to do the work and the grade, whatever they were asking for. That will earn you 0 points. Now, I'm not saying I will work with you if things go foul. I will work with you, but it's not going to earn you points for nothing. So if something happens, something bizarre occurs, let me know. We'll see if we can work it out. Even if the drop date is passed, there might be a way to work things out that you don't know about. But don't wait until after grades are posted and then come and say, is there anything I can do? The answer to that question is no. What else do we have here? Minimum exam scores. If any of your exam scores is below 50%, then I don't care what your numbers work out to be. If any of your exam scores is below 50, then I don't care what number you get. The highest grade you're getting out of me is a B, even if it doesn't matter. So there's a minimum scale. An A should mean something, and completely having no idea what's happening on 25% of the material in the course does not mean excellence. And so there it is. Makeup exams is not going to happen. There's no way to ensure the security and whatnot. And so what I will do, however, is the lowest of your exams 1 through 4, I will replace with the average score of the one you replace with your score on the final. So if you have a score of 60 and on the final you score 90, if 60 is your lowest exam score, and if you have a score of 60 on one of your exams, let's make it 80 on the final. Then I will take the 60 out and replace it with the average of 60 and 80, which is 70. So this 60 is gone, it's replaced with a 70, and then there I compute your total points from there. So that's how that's going to work. And let's see what else is in here. Most of the rest of this, I think, is egregious errors. If you make an error that is so bad, these are examples, I might deduct more points than the problem is actually worth. If the problem is worth 5 points, if you do this, if you do something terrible like this, if you simplify that or anything like this, and the only thing you put is x squared plus 9, I don't care what else you do. I don't care if you find a cure for cancer. You are not getting credit out of me. I'm doing the best I can to eradicate this from the planet. If you do this, if this problem, and you might have 5 pages of perfect work. If you do this, and this problem's worth 6 points, you might get -8. Because what you should do, of course, is FOIL this thing out and go merrily along your little way. So there are some other examples of that. Other things you can do. Canceling. Oh my gosh. Canceling things that don't cancel. Don't make just egregious, terrible, terrible mistakes like that. Most of the rest of this, I think you can read through for yourself. It's pretty straightforward. There's the notion about the division counselor. There's the final exam schedule. And just real quickly here, I don't want to get, this is already going on too long here, but things I hate. Things I hate. This is less of an issue now because we're not in class face-to-face all the time. But asking, will this be on the test? Every instructor you have ever had hates that question. We hate it, we hate it, we hate it. The exam is going to be what I think is a reasonable measure to be able to determine what kind of information you do and don't understand. Asking if this is going to be on the test, because really what's going on, think about it. If a person says, this is going to be a test, because what they're really saying is a little bit more. They're saying, because if it's not, I'm going to ignore it. And really what they're saying subtly is, then why did you bother telling us? So just don't ask any instructor, is this going to be on the test? When is the final? I just told you when the final is. It's right up here. Look above 3 lines. You think, well, what's the big deal? I just asked it one time. You ask one time. I need to answer it 150 times because I have 150 people asking one time unless I nip it in the bud. And so, not following blatant directions, I hate that. How many questions are on the test? No one has ever given me a reason why that's a legitimate question. And so on and so on and so on. Is there any extra credit? If the question is there any extra credit? The answer is there, period, is, period, none, period. So, anyway, so you can read through this, and then there's like 2 pages of things the school said I needed to include on my document. So there they are. You can look through that. So if you have any specific questions, go online and you can find the Yahoo address for your particular class. And if you have anything in specific you want to ask about, we can do that. More details about the specifics and how the Zoom is going to work will be posted on my website. Make sure you check the website. At the very least, every other day. Probably even more than that. Just to make sure you're up with the comments and whatnot. So anyway, I hope that's a quick brush through of the syllabus and how it's going to work. And then hopefully next week, the week of the 24th, we'll be able to get started and get the course going.